Okay, so in this video, I want to give a summary about what I've been doing on Waifudex since the new website. And I want to go back to the very beginning of that. So that was back in July 23rd. That's when I started on this new website. This is the website that I'm talking about. The one with the nice animations, the clean UI. This was all made in around 3 months. This whole front end, not front end, this landing page part specifically. So from July to October, I'm pretty sure I was working on just that. In October, I moved to the back end side of things for a little bit. Moving on, like I went back and forth from front end to back end until February 4th, which is around the time when it was pretty much done. In this time, I also made the homepage. So I just kind of added some stuff to it. For reasons I don't really want to get into, I had to kind of set up this homepage and like give it some content. And obviously, you can't really do that much here yet. It's been this way for a while, and that's why I've put these buttons here and stuff like that. But after February 4th, I did some more front end, and then in the 18th, I started on a launch video, which was a big pain because, I had to find editors, and it was just a bunch of back and forth. That was a pain, but we launched it. It says launch video, but it's more like launch new website. And just to speak on this for a bit, I probably won't do this in the future. Spending 24 days on a video that doesn't really bring too much value, doesn't make too much sense to me anymore. So I think for future TikToks, it'll just be, if I even ever make them, it'll just be very basic, low effort content for me where I don't have to really edit too much. But then after that launch video, that's where most people remember like the new website launched and then what happened after that. In that launch video, I did talk about scrapers, which is a thing that I completely did like a 180 on, which I want to explain too. So these scrapers, let me see if I can kind of describe what I was wanting to do. I actually am not sure if anyone really understood. I mean, I'm sure a few people knew what I meant when I say scrapers and why we need them, but I've never really explained it properly. So, let's say that like this is our database, right? So like this is like the Waifudex database, okay? Now, obviously, when we first start out, it's going to have 0 things inside of it. And there's other databases that exist in the world, like Mal or AnyDB, and so on. I wanted to kind of populate our database from day one. So day one, when we like launch the full beta, our database would have a bunch of data in it already. To do that, we would have to make these things called scrapers. We would make these things, they would kind of sit in the middle right here. They would go out to these websites and scrape their data, and then it would give it back to us. And there's some, I guess, moral issues. I mean, obviously these sites don't want that to happen. They have preventions in place for it. And me as like a website owner, I wouldn't want someone to scrape my website either. If we want a big database, like this is, I think, a good way to do it. But the issue is that these scrapers were so painful to create and took so long. All this stuff was just a separate thing from what I need to focus on, which is the app. Waifudex app, also known as like the web app, the website. It was just all this stuff, and in comparison, the app became really small. All our time and focus was on this. I was trying to like kind of do a different idea though, because I knew I couldn't focus on this, on all these scraper things. So I tried to like kind of get together a little dev team and open source it, but it ended up falling through just because I realized that it's all this effort for what? For something that gives us data. And I just looked at it and I was like, we don't really need it. And the thing that I'm kind of leaning on now is I'm just going to focus on making this app. This stuff is going to be like a non-thing to worry about, if not completely scrapped. And then we instead will focus on the app, which is the website. And I will instead just focus on building tools that let people just input data themselves. And that was another thing that I've been saying for a long time, but I've always said it like that plus the scrapers. But now it's just 100% this. So imagine just like a basic like input title, like input description, input characters, and so on. And basically, a user would like click on something and it would take them to this location, which is just a page that they would have to fill out all this information with, right? And I think this is better because it basically means that we'll be able to like focus on the app and get that out faster and not have to worry about any of this scraper stuff. So we would just not worry about this anymore. In fact, I'm just going to completely delete this thing, right? So just delete it. And we instead, we're just going to focus on this. It means that people can then use the app, submit data, and then we can have, just a small team to verify that data before it's actually added to our database. So after this point, it gets added to our database, right? And, in this process of submitting data, like if a user submits valid data, they can get some rewards, some perks, stuff like that. Actually, just to be more clear, I'll say like user submits data. They do this, and that. Okay? So to kind of wrap up this whole conversation about the scrapers, basically it was a thing I was thinking about doing for a while, and I just realized it was going to be way harder than I originally anticipated, and it would just completely distract me from what I need to be focusing on, which is just all of this website stuff, all the app stuff, okay? So that's why the scrapers are no longer, and I had a little break for 7 days. I don't know, I went out of town, I think. And then that's that. And then at the end of this time, I decided to kind of move away from the scrapers. Then the next one, I went back to working on the front end and back end, more back end, more front end, blah, blah, blah. This is when I went on break for a long time. So I went on break for 28 days, went to Hawaii, went to Anime Expo. When I came back from this break, the front end was like very complete, and the only other thing to do was just the whole back end side of things. You know, because like the front end looks great and wonderful at this point, but the back end it was very hard to like add new things. So what I actually planned on doing was hiring contractors. You know, I mean, I was completely willing to pay people to just set up a new API. And when I continued to look into it and I was interviewing people and researching about like what I would want them to build, I actually found an open source project that I just ended up using instead. And I was able to make the new API in a few days instead of paying people thousands of dollars. The other thing I did was new database. Yeah, so, you know, basically new API, new database, more backend stuff here and there. Then we released the logins. This was all this stuff. This was able to be released very quickly because of these two things that I did here. And yeah, I could have continued adding features very quickly because, as I've said before, at this point, the front end has been pretty much hammered out. Like everything is, for the most part, good to go. And it was just these last two things that I needed to do. But then I was kind of looking like, what else could I do before I really commit to the way that I was doing things? And to clarify, I was making things strictly for the web. Right, so all this code at this point would not work on mobile. And when I mean mobile, I obviously mean iOS and Android apps that are native, that are high quality and so on. So, you know, it's the boring, but it's the smart thing to do. It's like take a few steps back to then add mobile support. And what that looks like is that you can think of it like we have our code right now, which is like the Waifudex core code, which, you know, simply was just only made for the web. But we need other options, which would be just mobile. And if we zoom in on like this arrow, this is going to be weird because I'm pointing an arrow to an arrow. But to do this step, we need to like refactor to use React Native. And this was like over a month that I kind of spent on this thing. And it continues to be an ongoing step, you know, and then in the future, I also want, this won't be hard to do. Desktop apps. So desktop app is not that hard because the same web code will work on desktop. Just needs a few more tweaks. But yeah, so that's kind of why it's been slow. I could have continued working pretty fast at this point, as I've said earlier. And you know, the next thing I added after the mobile stuff was the whole forgot password stuff. So this works now. You could put in like this, you can do this, you do a capture code, all that stuff works. And that was able to be added fast because of this again. But the reason there was a pause was because I needed to do mobile, right? So yeah, I mean, all in all, it has been quite a long time since this whole new website has started. So the next thing I'm going to add are user sessions. So when you log in, you can refresh the page and you'll stay logged in. After that will be password resets, profiles, just all the next steps. Because once the user sessions are taken care of, then that opens up a whole nother realm of possibilities. But yeah, so, you know, this was a video where I just kind of rambled on like what's been happening. And I'm just going to kind of chop it up and edit it real quick. And yeah, and then I'll just send it to the Discord and Twitter and whatnot. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. No, but yeah, just stay tuned for more updates. You know, I might make more of these videos because it wasn't actually too hard to make. But yeah, alright, so see you guys.